Welcome to everyone to the City of Lebanon Plan Commission meeting on Monday, September 19th, 2022. Call the meeting to order. And Kelly, would you have the roll call, please?
Okay, John Lassley.
Here.
Dan Bayshore.
Here.
Kevin Krulik.
Here.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
Ashley Paddock. Here. Brian Tandy.
Here.
Allie Mullen. Here. Lori Gross. Here.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion on the approval of last month's minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve last month's minutes.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
John Lassley.
Aye.
Dan Bayshore.
Aye.
Kevin Krulik.
Aye.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Ashley Paddock.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Allie Mullen.
Yes.
Lori Gross. Yes.
Okay. First item on the docket is number 22-46, Scott Barrett requesting primary plat approval for a 3-lot industrial subdivision. The property is zoned PBI, Planned Business Industrial. The property is generally located at 401 South Enterprise Boulevard and the parcels immediately south of the subject parcel. Ben?
Good evening, Plan Commission members. I'll give a quick overview on this here. Actually, the next 3 items on your agenda are all related to this project. This first item is actually a reworking of the existing lot, the existing parcels, and just redrawing the lines to accommodate a 3rd building on the site. So they want to bring up the overhead. This is the existing site. You see here outlined in yellow. You got 2 buildings on the site right now. This is Scott Barrett's building here to the north and an additional building to the south. And they are looking at, as we get into the development plans here and the next 2 items, looking at an expansion of this Scott Barrett building and then also tucking a spec building here in the middle. So what they're doing here is basically taking these 3 parcels and redrawing the lot lines to accommodate that additional building. And this is a little hard to see here because it's on multiple pages. This kind of gives you an idea. Lot 1 was the existing building to the north, and then Lot 2 here in the middle would accommodate the spec building, and then the lines are redrawn to create that lot number 2, and then lot number 3 becomes a smaller lot here for that existing building in the south. So really what happens is this line gets drawn across here to create that lot 2 here in the middle. So that's the first item here on the agenda. In terms of the primary plat review, we're really just looking to make sure that those lots that are created meet all of the standards of the zoning district, which they do. So in that case then, we have reviewed the primary plat as presented, and we find compliance with the UDO requirements for the subject site. Staff recommends approval of the subject primary plat contingent on the following condition, and that the applicant adequately address any remaining TAC comments, and that those are kind of intertwined with comments related to the development plans we'll get to here in a moment as well. That's all I have on this item. Be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have a question for Ben? Okay. I don't see any questions. I'd also ask for the applicant to come forward, please.
Yes, Andy Taylor with Kinley Horn and Associates, I'm the civil engineer on the project. We've got a representative from Pure Development and CSO. It's the architect of the 2 development plans we have coming through here. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions? And all 3 of them will come together, right?
I'm sorry.
I said all 3 of them will be together?
Yes.
When we're finished? Okay. I don't see any questions here. Ben, you ready to go to the next one? Oh, Froden. I got to open up to the public. Anybody have a question in the public hearing? Come forward. Give your name and address. Anybody wants to come and speak? Being none, we'll close the public hearing. Next, we'll go to 2247. Ben?
All right. Pull up the plans here. So this would be the proposed speculative building. If they want to pull the screen up, we'll kind of walk through the overall site plan here. So again, to the north here is the lot 1 that included the existing Scott Barrett building, and then lot 3 is down here in the corner. So this includes a speculative building here that you see in this plan. Zoom in maybe just a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And let me get out my notes. This is just under 200,000 square feet. You'll see here that they've got two entrances, one to the south here that would be the employee entrance, one to the north would be truck access. All the employee parking areas provided to the south of the building, and then you've got the truck docks and all the trailer parking areas here to the north with the fire access road going around the building. So again, we have reviewed this for compliance with all of the planned business industrial requirements. We'll get back to those and have found that they do meet all of the setback and bulk standard requirements of the UDO for Planned Business Industrial District. In terms of parking, again, I mentioned the parking that they have provided here on site. This is a speculative building. There is not a tenant known. So once a tenant is identified, we'll re-review the parking to make sure that they do meet all the parking standards. I anticipate that this will be sufficient. This will be a warehouse, likely a warehouse building, so that they're really fairly standard in terms of number of employees, but we will re-review that once we get a tenant. In terms of warehousing, the parking requirement is one space per employee on the largest shift, plus one space per vehicle used in the operation. So again, we'll just re-review this when a tenant is known, is identified to make sure they have enough parking, but I do anticipate that they would have enough parking. In terms of lighting, I'm not going to pull it up because you won't be able to read anything on it because there's a bunch of little small numbers, but we have reviewed their lighting plan in terms of they meet all the lighting standards of the ordinance and the photometric plan to make sure that there's no light spillage on neighboring properties. So we did have to work through that with them to get some updates, but we do have those and they do have a plan that meets all the standards. All right, let me go find the landscape proposal. Landscape plan. All right. So they do meet all of the required landscaping for this site. When you're also considering any other requirements here associated with that, you'll see here, oops, I keep going a little too far. They have provided all of the street tree and buffer yard requirements along Enterprise Boulevard. And then you see here, then they have provided all the required parking lot perimeter and interior landscaping associated with the employee parking lot here. So they have met all the requirements for the site and provide all the landscaping that you see here, and that will all be installed as part of the construction of the project. In terms of signage, again, this is a speculative building, so there's no tenants known at this time. We anticipate before any signage is installed that they would submit that signage package. We'd review to make sure that they meet all those requirements, whether that be ground or wall signs associated with the building. So we will review that at the appropriate time when that's submitted. In terms of architecture review, let me pull that. The elevations up. Here are the proposed elevations of the building. Again, you can kind of see the east and west elevations. This would be the south elevation, which would be on the side of the building adjacent to the employee parking lot. And then the north side, which is where all the truck docks are located. This is a precast concrete building. Again, meets all of the requirements of the UDO in terms of construction for a building of this size. And then we will just quickly summarize this. Staff has recommended approval of the development plan of this project contingent on the following conditions. Again, that the applicant adequately address any remaining technical advisory committee comments, and two, that the applicant will submit a signage plan prior to sign installation. Happy to answer any questions about this building.
Okay, anyone from the board, questions for Ben? Okay, I don't see any. Would the applicant come forward, please?
Yeah, Andy Taylor again. Obviously, we've got the representatives from Pure Development here and the architect as well. Happy to answer any questions. I don't know that I have anything else to add.
Any questions from the board members? Okay. Not seeing any. Okay. I'll now open up the public hearing. Anyone like to come forward? Seeing no one coming forward, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, the next one is 2248. No. Ben, you want to do all these separately, or would you like to do them all?
We'll need to do three separate votes, but I can just go ahead and walk through each one of these, but I think it would make sense to do three separate votes. Yeah.
Okay.
right.
Okay, docket 2248.
2248 then is the expansion to the existing Scott Barrett building. Let me zoom in on this a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So this, you can kind of just orient yourself. This is the proposed spec building here to the south. This is the existing Scott Barrett building, and then this that's hatched represents the expansion. Then expanding also the employee parking area on the south, providing additional truck docks and trailer parking area to the north, and again extending that fire road around the perimeter of the building. This is almost 350,000 square foot expansion represented here to the existing building. And in terms of walking through the standards, let me get to that page. We have reviewed it for all of the setback and bulk standards requirements and found that they do meet all of the standards. In terms of parking, they have provided 55 additional trailer staging spaces that you see to the north here. And there's no additional employee parking that's proposed with this expansion, so they have provided everything that you see here on both sides of the building and trailer parking areas. They have provided a photometric plan that meets all of our lighting standards, and so make sure that there's no light spillage on adjacent properties, so we have walked through that with them and gotten a lighting plan that meets all those standards. In terms of landscaping, it's a little bit more limited here because the employee parking area has already been proposed. Essentially, you will, I'm not going to go look for it because they'll show a row of trees on this south property line here and then some additional trees on this north property line on the expansion part. And they do meet all applicable landscape standards of this ordinance. In terms of signage, it's an existing building, so they're not proposing any additional signage as part of this expansion. And then in terms of architecture, again, it's a large 350,000 square foot industrial building. You see here it again, it's a precast concrete building, and you'll see here that the expansion will include truck docks on both the north and south sides of the building, really just an extension of what's already there on that existing building. With that then, staff finds compliance with the UDO requirements for this subject site and recommends approval of the subject development plan contingent on the following conditions. Again, that the applicant adequately address any remaining technical advisory committee comments. Again, I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any on this one.
Ben, are both of those going to be done about the same time, or is it going to be done at a different time as far as the...
I'll let the applicant address that. I think they're planning on starting the expansion first, but I'll let them address that for you.
Any other questions for Ben? Okay, would the applicant come forward, please?
Yep, Justin Lawhorn with Pure Development on behalf of Scott Barrett Foods. So to answer your question time-wise, the expansion, we are planning to break ground here initially in the spring. Once we work through some pricing and things like that, the spec would potentially start at that same time, but it may also shift just depending on pricing, how things come back, kind of to be determined.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone have a question? Okay, not seeing anyone come forward, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, then we'll approve each one by one. So you want docket number 2246 would be the first.
I would motion to approve docket 22-46 contingent on all TAC comments are met.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
John Lastly,
Yes.
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Ally Mullen,
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Okay, the next one is docket number 2247. I need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion that we approve the development plan for docket 22-47, contingent on the following conditions: that they address all TAC comments and present a signage plan.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll,
Is that
please.
Ashley or Ally?
Ashley.
Ashley, okay. John Lastly,
Yes.
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Ally Mullen, Yes. Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay. Passed. Okay, we're ready for docket number 22-48. Okay, have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the development plan for docket 22-48 contingent on the following conditions, that all TAC comments are addressed.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
John Leslie.
Yes.
Dan Bayshore.
Yes.
Kevin Krulik.
Yes.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Ashley Paddock.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Ally Mullen. Yes. Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay, all three of them carried forward. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay. Anybody's here for Auburn Meadows since it's been, anyone here that's on Auburn, not Auburn Meadows?
Yeah, that one was, last month was tabled till the October
Right,
meeting.
that's what I mean, yeah, I just
Yeah.
didn't want somebody sitting waiting on that to happen, so. The next one in the new business is docket number 22-57, the Hinky Development Group LLC requesting preliminary plan approval for Waterford and a 900-acre single-family residential development to be generally located at 400 East between 100 South and 300 South, and the property is zone planned unit development, and the abbreviation is PUD. Okay, Ben?
Thank you, Keith. I'll walk through process a little bit here first and then get into some of the details related to the preliminary plan that's before you tonight. So if you recall, early 2020, the Waterford development came in for the PUD rezone. It was actually done in a number of different phases because part of the property needed to be annexed first. But we did, Plan Commission made a positive recommendation, and then council adopted the PUD rezone and ordinance for the Waterford development on this site. It was roughly 2,000 acres associated with the entire development. So the next step after the PUD rezone is then the preliminary plan phase, or it's essentially the same as a primary plat. What they have done because of the scale of this development, they're actually going to bring the preliminary plan in phases too. So this is the first phase of the preliminary plan. It's about 900 acres of the 2,000 or plus or minus acres. And this would represent the two 18-hole golf courses and then all of the golf course adjacent lots, plus the village center area that includes the clubhouse. That's what's included in this one. If they want to pull up the map, I can kind of show you an overall. Again, this is hard to be able to express the scale here because this is 2 miles from north to south and almost 2 miles from east to west. So this is a very significantly sized area. But you can kind of see roughly the 900 acre area we're talking about. There are pockets of areas that for future development that you'll see kind of around the periphery of this area and through the middle here. And then the other portion that is not yet part of the preliminary plan will be about the third of the development that's on this west end here. This is primarily the non-residential area to the west here. There would be commercial and industrial development. I know they're working through some details that relates to that now. But in terms of additional residential, there would be pockets of small portions of development that would be integrated in and around this area here. And then, of course, if you recall, there's another about 150 acre sites that's to the northwest up by the fairgrounds. It's across 100 South. That would also come in separately for its own preliminary plan. So as those come in, there will be additional Plan Commission meetings, notices that are sent out. So this is one phase of the preliminary plan, and there will be multiple phases to the preliminary plan, all which will be at the Plan Commission for a public hearing, just like there is tonight. Depending on the decision made by the Plan Commission tonight on this, the next phases will be additional detail as it relates to construction plans, in some cases for the overall development, but then also we'll be starting to look at sectioning this out. Certainly they're not going to develop 1,533 lots all at once. They'll be looking at trying to section out this in phases, and we'll be looking at construction plans associated with those sections as they move into the overall development over time. Certainly this will be multiple sections. So as you look at this overall development, we'll look at it this scale here first, and then we can get a little bit more detailed. There are 4 or 5 entrances that are proposed into the neighboring public streets. You've got one to the northwest here, one to the northeast. Then you've got one kind of probably about 3/4 of a mile south of 100 South here, located along 400 East. Then you've got another one that's directly adjacent to the village center, which this is this area here. And then there's another one associated with this section of the development down here along 400 East. You'll also see here that there's some changes being made to what would be 400 East in terms of what would be the primary route. There is the potential for, and certainly this is not planned or proposed, I mean, there's a proposal for it, but there's nothing planned, nothing designed. Over time, as this development comes together over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, there may be demand warranted for another interchange on Interstate 65, so that's roughly what's shown here, is that somewhere in this area there will be a connection point to what would potentially be a proposed new interchange. Again, that has to go through all the federal highway process, and you have to show justification and feasibility and all that good stuff, so that would be something that would happen certainly down the road a number of years, and you have to be able to show the demand is there. But you can kind of see how that realignment may happen with 400 East to provide the primary route would be heading towards that new interchange as opposed to heading south. In terms of the overall development, again, I mentioned the village center is located in this central area here. That would be kind of a mixed-use commercial area, neighborhood-scale commercial area. The clubhouse is located just west of the village center area, kind of in this general area here. The 18-hole championship course is intermingled with the lots kind of on this northern two-thirds of the development here. I'll let them talk about what that golf course is and how that will work. And then there is a second 18-hole golf course. My understanding is this is like a par 60 course. It's a shorter course that is intermingled with this lower third of the development here. So there are 36 holes of golf being proposed here. Then you would see in terms of, again, I mentioned before, but mentioned again, there's 1,533 lots that are a golf course adjacent in this 900 acres. And those represent sizes from all different levels that are proposed here and are permitted per the PUD ordinance. So these would all be varying levels of housing. Again, if you wanted, they can probably talk a little bit more about what sorts of houses are proposed. I know we've talked about it before. They've probably got some better ideas now as they're starting to lay this out about how this is going to move forward in terms of development timeline and what they're seeing in terms of housing that'll be going on in here. So that's a real quick overview of the layout. You can also see here this diagonal that you see running through here. That is the route of the Big Four Trail coming through the development. They've provided for where it would cross or where it would essentially access 100 South up here at the northwest corner, running directly southeast through the property. And then once it spills out of the 400 East, then there's another section that's out in the county still that we have to figure out before we connect to Whitestown and Zionsville. But this is a fairly long section of the Big Four Trail that would be developed as this development comes together and as they develop out these sections. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. In terms of utilities, we're still working through the details there on utilities. They're looking at a couple different options in terms of providing water service and sanitary service. Those are all things that will come together as we get closer to construction plan phase. But they're looking at two different options, one being a large lift station that would actually be up closer to the 150 acres here on 100 South, or the possibility of providing a smaller package treatment plant somewhere within the development that would serve this overall area. And they're looking at the feasibility of both of those two options right now and determining which way is the best way forward in terms of that. But the idea there is whether it's the lift station or the package plant, it would have capacity for what the city is intending for this overall area in terms of development, both within Waterford and surrounding Waterford, to make sure we got that capacity no matter which option is chosen. So that's a real quick overview of the preliminary plan. Again, as I mentioned, this is about 900 of it's probably a little over 2,000 acres at this point. In terms of process, this is a plan commission only process, so we'll be looking for a motion to approve tonight, if you so choose. This does not go to the council, so this would be a plan commission approval. If and or when this is approved, then this would, again, it would go back and we'd be looking at them in terms of phases of development, which phases are going to come first. I'll let them talk a little bit about that too. I think they have some better ideas where they think those first phases of development are going to be. And then that would be more of an administrative process at that point. We'd be looking at doing secondary plats associated with those sections of development. And then also construction plans that, again, goes back through that technical review. And we'll get into more detail as it relates to drainage. That's a big thing once it gets to construction plan phase, making sure the surveyor's office is satisfied with the drainage plan, making sure that our consultant who does the drainage review for the city is also satisfied. And obviously this is a big development. It's going to take some time to review some of those technical details, but they're all underway now in terms of looking at preliminary design for those. So there's still a lot left to do before you're going to see any activity out here once we get into the construction plan phase. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from anybody on the board?
Pam, when the trail coming through, is there already, I'm not sure, does the city have like landscape standards and everything set for like the trails and stuff like that already?
Yeah, we do, and I didn't go through that page. It's a little hard to, I don't have the color, but they do have a page in part of their plans that kind of shows the programming for buffer yards and landscape standards as it relates to the perimeter of the development between different phases of the development with residential to commercial. So rather than having them put a planting plan together, which probably would have showed like 200,000 trees and shrubs on here, we had them kind of put a program together, like along this perimeter will be a 20-foot buffer yard with these landscape standards and things like that. But yeah, there are standards associated with the trail, and also the buffer yards where they're appropriate.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Anyone else on the board have a question for Ben?
Ben, real quickly, as far as the trail goes, I mean, I know we're still working through that and everything. Is there any negative, or is there any, I guess, question in the sense that if for some reason we're not able to continue in that direction, as far as going through Waterford, that it would be feasible to go someplace else after we've already went through there, if we can't connect the way that we're thinking?
Are you thinking once we get outside of Waterford, west or east?
Yes.
I think west, there's just a small connection that goes through property that's also part of Waterford, so I'm not really concerned about west. East, you get outside of our jurisdiction. As soon as you get outside of Waterford, I know we do have a committee that meets relatively regularly that includes both city and county officials talking about how that could be accomplished. I don't necessarily have any specific reservations about it right now, but there is still some work to do to figure out that last section, because it does, whether it goes directly through where the old railroad right-of-way was or it uses road routes, there is an option. We're just not sure exactly what it'll be yet.
Just to speak to that, John, we've had conversations with the family that owns the next farm to the east. It's the Cragen family. Although they are not interested in us putting it on the railroad corridor, they would have no issue with us jogging it across their property on what is that, Kern Road that goes through there. So we do have a very high-level loose plan of how we could get it across. And then there's always the other option is that someday that farm may not be in the hands of that family, and there may be a development partner there that we could look to.
I just hated to see it, I guess, go through that whole area, and then we get through it, and then, there's nowhere to take it.
I guess the moral of what I'm trying to say is, there's a developer in the town of Whitestown bringing it up to 500 East. And this project and other projects will bring it to 400 East. We have that mile gap, that is one property owner, and we've already had positive conversations about kind of jogging it through his property. It'd be on his property adjacent to the county roads that go through there. We're still holding hope that someday we can get it onto the railroad corridor, the original railroad corridor, but it doesn't exist real clearly across the entirety of that property.
Okay.
But we have a plan, whether it's on the railroad corridor or following county roads, to make that 1.2 mile connection. That would be the
Good, I hadn't heard that, so I was a little worried that.
And that'd be the
that
only
might be an
gap
issue.
from the Monon Trail all the way to Colfax.
Right,
So-
okay, great.
Got another question. Just trying to get perspective in my head on the PUD. You got all three of the single-family detached homes. Can you tell me like which classification they would fit into, kind of each one, like SF1, SF2? That gets more defined. I can understand it better for me.
Yeah, so I basically summarized the PUD ordinance standards in your staff report just to kind of jog your memory of what was approved there. So we've got most of these, my expectation would fall into the single-family detached, I'd say front-load garage or garage for design, or side-load garage is probably what it will be. So like the village standards, that you may see some of those on to the south. You can kind of tell if you look at this overall, you can see that these are some of the narrower lots, if there are narrow lots, to the south here. So you might see more of those village standards applying down here. And then when you get into the larger lots up here, you're going to see some rear load. You actually won't see rear load because that'll be on alleys. That'll be some of these smaller areas that we see that aren't developed now. So you're really going to be looking at possibly the village standards to the south and then the single-family detached garage forward standards to the north here. So you're looking at minimum lot widths of 50 and 60, although most of these lots are much bigger than that.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
Ben, you may have covered this, and I was trying to read through the drainage reports. I'm assuming there's drainage ponds on there, but I couldn't tell from the map if they were like drainage ponds or like sand traps.
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell from the
Golf
scale,
course.
but yeah, everything you see that kind of follows the golf course in here, those are all wet ponds. As opposed to, you're really just seeing drainage here. So I don't know how many there are, but there's got to be close to 20 different ponds that are scattered throughout here. And that, in addition to providing water hazards on the golf course, would also provide drainage for the development.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Being no more, we'll ask for the applicant to come forward, please.
Perfect, yep, thanks. Slide off. There we go, all right. Good evening, members of the Plan Commission. My name is Phil Sunling, and I'm with the Hinky Development Group. First of all, I really appreciate your time and certainly your consideration this evening. Ben did a great job, per usual, providing you all with an overview of our proposed development, and I just want to take a few minutes here to highlight some key additional components to our plan. In front of you is our latest concept plan, a color version of essentially what Ben just showed you. And just to get you oriented here, this is County Road 100 south to our north boundary. This is County Road 400 east to our east boundary, and then County Road 300 south to our south. As most of you know, premier golf course communities are really our bread and butter. We developed Bridgewater in the Carmel Westfield area in the early 2000s, and we are actively developing both Chatham Hills in northern Westfield as well as Holiday Farms in Zionsville. All three of these courses are classic peat dye designs, and our latest at Holiday Farms, which was built in 2021, was voted one of the best 12 new courses across the world by Lynx magazine. We were named alongside new courses in Ireland, in Thailand, and even Abu Dhabi. So quite an achievement for us and something we're obviously very, very proud of. Waterford will be no different. It'll also be a peat dye design, but it's designed in a very unique way. With Pete passing away in 2020, we wanted to create a true tribute course to Pete, and we've incorporated 18 of his best holes, most iconic holes from across the world into this course. Admittedly, this was something that took a lot more time than what we initially thought it would. And essentially, it was not a simple effort at all. Pete has so many courses with so many great holes. First of all, to choose an iconic hole from each of those courses, and then to fit that hole naturally into this topography was quite an exercise. But we're there now, and we're really excited to deliver this incredible tribute golf course to the city of Lebanon. In terms of routing on the golf course, you kind of see there's two loops. There's an outer loop that works counterclockwise here. That's the first 9 holes, and it essentially works all the way around the perimeter of the golf course. And as Ben mentioned, here just west of the village area is where we're going to land the clubhouse. This here is we're calling the village area. I'll get into some of those details here shortly. The second 9 holes is the inner loop, also working counterclockwise here. That finishes obviously at the clubhouse as well. And to your question on how many bodies of water, it's a little clearer in this colored rendering. We have 17 holes with water on them. It's a lot of water. If you're a golfer, that's a lot of trouble to work around, but obviously a lot of his iconic holes included a lot of water. Let's see here. Yeah, nestled along the perimeter of the golf course, of course, is the bulk of our residential homes has been mentioned here. You can kind of see them on this exhibit. This is the Big Four Trail, just to get you kind of oriented. With the development of this size, we have the unique ability to create diverse pockets of living with different types of homes along with different price points. Either way, with all of our developments, our focus on these homes is going to be of great quality. Every single community we do is high-end community. We don't do anything low-end. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Chatham or Holiday, but they're premier communities, or premier developments in both of those communities. So it's something we hang our hat on for sure. And I know a popular question has been, what price points are you guys anticipating here at Waterford? And I will say that that's going to be market-driven. We have historically outperformed our pro formas in terms of projected assessed values of our homes in our communities, and we expect this one to be no different. I have no doubt at all that we will pace the residential market here in Lebanon. At Chatham, we ended up with around 1,200 acres of ground there, and we'll finish that development out with over $1 billion worth of residential development in that community alone. And at Holiday, we're on about 600 acres, and we'll finish out there over $800 million in assessed value, purely from a residential standpoint. And here at Waterford, with the amount of acreage we have available, we anticipate over $1.2 billion worth of residential assessed value. Truly staggering numbers, massive, massive development. Another popular question we continually get is, where are you guys planning to start? And just to get you kind of reoriented here, this is 400. This right here, where my pointer is our main entry. As you travel west into our development, this is the village area here. The first section, obviously we're going to do the golf course along with the residential portion. But the first section, generally we try to include about 150 homes in our section 1. So we'll do this stub here to the northwest. We'll probably try to land somewhere on the Big Four to open that amenity up. That'll be one of the early amenities that we create at Waterford. Additionally, we'll also do a section here, likely to the south. These are higher density homes. I think those are planned for 60-foot lots. Here to the north, we're anywhere from, I think those are 90s and 100s, maybe, Jim?
Mostly 90s.
Mostly 90s here to the north. And then as you travel along the Big Four Trail, those are smaller, going back to smaller lots. Internal to the subdivision, kind of here on some of these internal routes, you'll get our largest lots, our premier lots, 100s, 120s, 100 plus. Let's see here. Going back to the village center here, this is an area we're really excited for. It includes a number of high-quality shops kind of perimetering this loop road. It's centered by a 5-acre, we'll call it a green space park type area in the center. As you travel south, we're going to have a number of sport courts, tennis, pickleball. Pickleball is obviously a hugely growing sport. We're going to make sure we capitalize on that and include a lot of courts here. We're also going to include some small soccer fields and potentially baseball fields. And we took a trip down to Tennessee about a year and a half ago, and there was a development that we were taking a look at, and they had a wiffle ball field, and it was pretty neat. So we're going to try to incorporate a wiffle ball field. This will ultimately function as our central hub for all of our community activities. And we anticipate this obviously being a truly vibrant space, one that our residents will really enjoy. These are just a couple photos of how we envision that to look, and this will come through in a future filing, so a lot of this commercial area is not included now, but when we do get a little bit more definition, we'll bring that through. And next, I want to highlight just a few project commitments we've had. As Ben mentioned, it's been a couple years since we've been zoned. There were a few commitments during the zoning period that I want to highlight, and then also we've had a few property owners reach out to talk through some concerns they've had, and we want to make sure we formally address those and commit to those on record. The first of which is here on the south end of our property. Let me go back one slide. This is the area kind of in peach color here on the south end of our property. There's a 56-acre dedication that we've committed to donating to the school. They've got big plans for this ground, obviously for, I think, two separate schools. So we'll make sure we dedicate that when the time is right. Additionally, Mr. Krulik reached out to me and mentioned there's federal funding for a roundabout intersection up here on 400 and 100. We are committed to dedicating the right-of-way for what we own, at least on the southwest corner of that roundabout. Additionally, when that design progresses a little bit, if we can capture stormwater and route it through our site, we're happy to do so. So we'll make sure we work with Kevin through that process. Additionally, Mr. Bill Preston reached out to us. He lives right here, just east, kind of on our southeast corner. He's got his driveway that's roughly 490 feet south of this property line here. It's about 200 feet north of our southern entry currently, as it's shown. In talking with Bill, their concerns are getting in and out of their driveway when this gets developed out. This is not part of our first section, so we've got some time before that happens. And I just want to go on record formally that we are willing to shift this south to a point where he's comfortable getting in and out, and we'll work directly with him and with Kevin and their team to make sure that we shift that south enough to give him that level of comfort. Essentially, all we would do is flip these lots to the north and push this drive to the south. Pretty simple exercise when we get to the CD level. Also, he has a drain tile that routes through his property. We met with him, and I believe it was his engineer. It's been a while during the zoning process. There's a drain tile that routes west and then south to the creek. We will make sure we capture that in our stormwater system, make sure that is conveyed. And I guess that's worth highlighting. We had another property owner reach out today before the meeting. He lives, let's see here, he lives right here. And there's a drainage pattern that kind of runs south. There's some standing water on the north side of County Road 100. This all kind of flows southwesterly. We've got a pond here. Obviously, we're going to make sure we don't. First of all, I want to go on record that we're not going to impact his property any more than it already is. And if we can improve the situation, we obviously will. I don't think he has any major issues. He just wants to make sure that we do not make it worse, and we will certainly not do so. So, let's see here. In terms of next steps, as Ben mentioned, we're working through with the utility folks and establishing a sanitary sewer plan. We hope to have that finalized here in the next couple of weeks. We've been coordinating with town staff on a lot of different issues, but we'll file CDs here relatively soon and hope to start. Our plan is to start construction, I would say, spring of next year. Waterford, as you can imagine, will be a one-of-a-kind type development, truly unlike any other, with an estimated total assessed value, when all said and done, of over $2 billion. An incredible project for, obviously, the community. It's undoubtedly a massive project, one we've taken our time on the front end, which is why there's been such a gap between zoning and now. We want to make sure we check all the boxes, do things right on the front end before we get into construction. We're incredibly excited to deliver this project and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Anyone from the board have questions for the applicant?
I have a question. What's the average lot size going to be in square feet?
Most of our lots are, at Chatham, I would say the average lot size is anywhere from 80 to 90 feet. These will, let me go back to this plan. Let me see if I can.
What's the total square feet average?
He can't.
We go by widths. I would say quarter acre maybe, which is 13. We got our engineer here. He could do the math.
Yeah, sorry. Jim Reinhardt with
Repeat
V3.
your question, please.
Yeah, I'm just asking for just square footage an average square footage of the, let's just say the three different sections or
so my guess is just kind of going through the mentally going through the 1,500 lots. We have some 60s and some 60, 90, 100. I would say the average is probably 70 to 75 by 130, so that puts us about 9,000 square feet would be the average lot size.
And the larger lot sizes are probably somewhere more like around above 12,000 or more.
And right now, the other thing to keep in mind, we haven't gone through the exercise of deepening the lots, and we're actually getting ready to do that, because when we initially laid this out, it's like everything was laid out absolute minimum 130 square feet so it could fit all the products. We ended up with more green space on the course than we want to leave for the course to have to maintain. So we're going to have the opportunity to expand quite a few of those lots back another 10, 20, 30 feet in areas, sometimes even farther, which will increase that square footage.
Square foot of the lot, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the board? Okay, I have a question for you. What about up front where it's going to be like, I won't say warehouses, but some industrial things
Yeah,
or something like that, businesses?
yeah, this area here, let me pull that up again. There we go. This, I believe you're referring to this area up here. This is all industrial zone ground, as well as commercial zone ground. That'll come through in a subsequent filing. We're kind of working through those details now, but with that being our front door to obviously the residential which is the heart of the community, we're going to make sure we'll pay a lot of attention to how those buildings look and how that gets oriented, because it really impacts what we're doing here. If you do that poorly, it's going to reflect on your residential. We want to make sure we don't impact that negatively.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the board? Being none, I'll open up the public hearing. Anyone like to come forward? Be sure you give your name and your address, please. Just come up to the mic and give your name.
Yes, my name's Chris Litcher on the property at
And you'll
39.
have 3 minutes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
You'll have 3 minutes to talk. Okay.
Oh, you have 3 minutes to ask
Yeah.
questions? Okay. All right. My name is Chris Litcher. I own the property at 3900 East, 100 South. In the current design, they show a fairly large open section, possibly up to 40 acres on that corner section that is not showing any kind of development at this time. When you have a development like this, my question is, how will we know what's going to end up as our neighbors? And the other thing is, they're showing an entrance coming off of 400 that will essentially either be right next to my property or over one. So as you think about the cars coming out of there, you're going to have a tremendous amount of traffic now that's going to basically sweep the frontage of all these homes that have been here for literally decades. Just some level of concern. Also, once you start, will all of those roads be put in initially and utilized throughout the construction phase? And will construction be a 7x24 operation, or will there be some limitations to respect the current property owners? Enough questions?
Okay, and when we're all finished with the public hearing, I'll ask Ben and the applicant to come back and answer your questions, okay? So, we'll wait till everybody's had their chance.
Evening. My name's Virgil Beeler. I live at 1171 Holmes Road. And Phil, thank you for all your help. You've been helping me a lot on this. But on the actual north side of the property, which it's tough to see because it wasn't zoomed in very well, but what are they going to do with there's a communication antenna there, and then there are 4 silos. So what are we going to do with those? And then there is 60 acres that dumps into my back pond. So I'm assuming there's laws you can't divert drainage that goes in, but I just wanted to check in on that and make sure that that's not going to affect my 14-foot pond depth there. I believe that, Phil, you had said that cul-de-sac was going to be on Holmes Road that comes into the north end of that property. Right now it's gravel road. So is it going to remain gravel? Are there going to be any infrastructure or any kind of utilities that are coming through that, or any cost to the homeowners that goes along with that? And let's see, there's supposedly a 25-foot berm on that north side of that golf course / their property. The property, or the actual height elevation of that dips a lot. I'd like to request that it's 25-foot height from the highest elevation point. So in other words, some of the lower points are going to be taller than 25 foot on the berm height. So we just want to make sure that it's at the highest point, 25 foot. And drains. And then there was a question or a comment made about north of the actual, I call it the trail. North of the trail, there's still a blank spot from the north side of maybe one of those actual golf holes. So I couldn't catch what was part of that. What is the actual plans or the proposed plans for that area, which is north of the golf course, and then basically northeast over, but at the corner of 100 and 400 South. That's it. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You can come forward now if you'd like, please.
I'm Bill Preston, 2555 South 400 East, and I want to thank Phil. He's been very helpful in both of the issues that I had. I'd be anxious to hear how far they'll be able to move that drive because both of traffic and of headlights sweeping the house, all the time. And then he's addressed the drainage tile issue already. And the only other question I had is, they were pointing over on the left as far as the sewage treatment plant. I'd be curious to hear where that's going to end up, but that's all I had. Do you have anything, Bonnie?
I wondered if somebody could put the map up so we can look at it while we're talking about it.
There we go. Does that
So,
help?
yeah,
Here's the
thank
mouse
you.
if need it.
Oh, thank you.
It's got a little pointer too.
Oh, geez, technology. So,
They took you out. There you go.
okay, so I have a question about if they do make this 400. See where
Excuse me,
you
could I have your name, please?
I'm sorry, Bonnie
And your address?
Preston, 2555 South, 400 East.
Okay, thank you.
So my question is, if they're going to make this 400 and go to is that going to go to a highway exit, like on 65? Okay. What happens then, our house is down here on the existing 400. So what's going to happen to our house and our street if that's not 400 anymore? That's all. And then the sewer.
Yeah, we'll
I was
answer
worried
that
about the
question, ma'am, when we're done.
sewer. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward and speak? Okay.
My name's David Cross. I live at 3225 East, 100 South. So I'm the first house west of 300, about a quarter mile west of 300. I had some concerns that I wanted to address about the water drainage, the flooding that currently occurs just to the south of 100 South. And I've got some maps or some diagrams that are actually pictures, and I don't know if I can pass these out or what to do.
No, let me get them.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay, that'd be great. I had, do I need to turn this on?
No, it's on.
Okay. All right. So I had sent this to Ben Bontrager about 2.5 years ago, I think March of 2020. But basically it talks about the concerns that I have. I'd taken some pictures. Let's see. This is my yard facing towards the west, and you can see this flooding just to the right of this. Over here is 100 South, and flooding goes for a quarter of a mile plus. So there's just substantial flooding in the area that I just want to make sure is addressed. Also, in this picture, you can see that I don't have any water standing in my yard right now. In the future, I don't want to have any water standing in my yard. I talked to Phil about this. He seemed to be confident that they would be able to address it. But there is water that comes down alongside of the road from Holmes Road all the way down in front of my house. There's also a field across the road from me that has a lot of water coming through it. And here's a picture of that. This is directly across the road from me. there's so much water that comes over there. The county has added 2 culvert pipes to come under the road and to drain into the corner of their property. Well, it drains into the corner of my property, which is probably 30 feet from theirs. It just goes directly over to their property. And like I said, that's my concern about the flooding, and just wanted to make sure that it was on record. I don't have water in my yard now, and I don't want it in the future. Also, I did have a question about the deep wells that they might be putting in place. I didn't know where they would be, how many, or what their plans for water are, and also how that might affect the water levels in the area. I know that I've tried to drill a well in my own yard. I've got almost 4 acres. I had to drill 3 different locations in my 4 acres, and I'm just a little concerned about the water level in the deep wells that they might be drilling. So I'd like to find out a little bit about that.
Thank you. Your time's up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else like to come forward?
Good evening. Sean Keith, 1305 South 400 East. Great that Kevin can speak afterwards. I just wanted to know about the widening of 400, if that's something that's going to take place, similarly affecting the water table as we're on a well pretty close to the development. The rotary, I think, was talked about, and then just in that northeast quadrant, just the future development, what that may look like. And how far that's going to butt right up to 400. We're right across the street. So those are just things hopefully we can get answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward? Okay, I don't see it anymore. I'll close the public hearing. And at this time, Ben, would you come forward? Or the applicant, either one, want to come and answer those questions, please?
Phil Sumling, Hinky Development again. I think I took good notes. I'll try to address these one by one. If I missed anybody's, obviously we can go back. But the gentleman on the property of 3900 East, 100 South, he asked about the 40 acres on the corner. There we go. I'm not sure if he's referring to this ground up here. Is that right? That is future single-family residential. It's all off golf. Everything before you tonight is basically on golf. That'll be a subsequent filing. So we'll have a little more detail on that single-family when the time comes. All of which will be in conformance with our PUD zoning. In terms of the traffic, it's a huge site, obviously, and one of the reasons we have so many connections is because it's a huge site and because there's obviously generating quite a bit of traffic. So we tried to evenly distribute that the best we can, knowing that 400 is kind of the existing, we'll call it an arterial roadway. So most of our focused on traffic is coming onto and off of 400. These connections here will be used mainly by folks that live kind of in this quadrant here. I don't anticipate a lot of traffic coming from the south that live here in the south using that entrance, nor would I expect this one to be used by folks not directly adjacent to that area. So anytime we develop property, we try to break out traffic as best we can. Mr. Beeler, question on the 4 silos. I assume we're going to end up taking those down. We don't really have a plan to incorporate those in any of our designs. They're obviously nice, large silos, so when the time comes, we'll make sure we disassemble those and get rid of them. Also, I can commit to making sure your pond is not affected. Obviously, we've got a lot of ponds on our property, and if you've got a good pond, you want to maintain that good pond, obviously we'll make sure that happens. Cul-de-sac, that is one of the commitments on Holmes Road during zoning. We did, one of the issues that came up was the folks that lived in this area here wanted to make sure they did not have a connection to Waterford, so we committed during the zoning process that we would not connect there so they don't get additional traffic. So that will be cul-de-sac. We're happy to handle that in our scope. There's been no discussion or plan on our end to do any sort of paving other than obviously the cul-de-sac. In terms of the 25-foot buffer, I think there may be a misunderstanding. That's a 25-foot wide buffer. I don't believe that's a height buffer. Ben, you may be able to confirm that. Confirmed with the head nod. And obviously, we'll make sure that we, I think all those buffers are included in our filing, correct? All the perimeter buffers. And Mr. Beeler, wherever you're at. Where's he at? Oh, there you are. I'm happy to walk through those details with you anytime. I'll meet you on site or whatever. On the north side, you also questioned what the plan is in these areas, and I've covered that. Mr. Preston, obviously addressed your comments during the presentation. How far south can we move this? As you can see here, we've got probably 400 or 500 feet. This is where my mouse is as I'm going up and down. That's probably 400 or 500 feet. So there's quite a bit of room to shift that south. So we should be good to shift it however far south that you feel comfortable. And on the sewer treatment plan, currently there's an area right here nestled in the industrial zone property that we plan on incorporating that. So it'll be far away from the residential, kind of nestled in the middle of that area. I'm not. Yeah, no plan to do anything with the communication tower. Thank you for the reminder. Mrs. Preston, you asked about the County Road 400 after the interchange. This area down here will remain as is. Obviously, you won't lose connection there. You will probably see less traffic, which could be a good thing. But yeah, we'll reconstruct this intersection here to divert or focus more, because obviously there's going to be more traffic using this to focus traffic to and from that area. So that should be a welcome change for your property. Mr. Cross addressed as much as I could. Let me see if your drawings are up here. Yeah, so your property sits here. Everything kind of flows southwesterly. As you can see, we have a pond right there. So we'll make sure that we capture via enclosed storm structure or whatever, or open swale. We'll make sure we get that water into that pond. And we'll be sure not to affect you negatively. Getting close to the end of the list here, sorry. Another question you had was in terms of the wells. Obviously, everybody's on city water. The only well we'll have is to feed the irrigation for the golf course. And at all of our communities, we work through DNR. They monitor all deep wells, all flow wells in Indiana. So what we do is there's a big test we do. So we drill a well, make sure we get sufficient water, and then we'll do a draw test. So, and DNR is part of that process to make sure that all the adjacent properties are not negatively affected. They'll test all the adjacent wells within the area and make sure they don't get drawn down when we do draw water for the irrigation. And that's how they set limits on the amount of water we can pull for the golf course. So I would not expect future issues on the well. Obviously, if there are, then we would have those addressed. But again, DNR is involved and they regulate and monitor that pretty closely. And then Mr. Keith, I think it was Keith, you asked about widening on County Road 400. We don't have plans to do widening. We'll obviously incorporate turn lanes and XL, decel to make sure it's safe where we do enter and exit 400. And yeah, really no plans beyond that to widen 400 unless obviously otherwise required. And we'll work with Kevin's team to make sure if that's a requirement through Lebanon, we'll make sure we get that captured. And you also asked about wells. I think those are addressed. I think that's it.
Any other questions? Ben?
And maybe just to fill in a couple of gaps. In terms of, I think there was a question about construction schedule, making sure it's not a 24/7 operation. We obviously have standards in terms of when construction can begin and end during the day. And so it's more, I think it's like 7 a.m. to, I can't remember what the PM hours are, but it's made sure that it's just during the daytime, not overnight construction, so you won't have any activity out there other than during those daytime hours. In terms of the widening, those will be done over time as necessary, as demand warrants it. We do have road impact fees that are collected on each one of these homes as they're constructed, and those fees are specifically intended to handle any additional capacity that needs to be created on adjacent roadways. So at the point where 400 East gets to the point where it may need to be widened to a larger cross-section, we will have been collecting road impact fees, and that will offset a significant portion of any widening. And same thing would hold true for 100 South, 400 East, any other of those roads in there. So we would, as needed, as the development occurs over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we will be collecting those fees. It's about $3,000 per home that we collect in fees. And as those collect over time, those will be available to handle the widening of the roads. Any existing maintenance, you can't use impact fees for those, but any widening necessary, we can use those fees for that. So we do have a method in place to collect fees from the development and then use the fees that we collect from the development to offset those needs in terms of expansion. Yeah, and in terms of the 25-foot berm along Holmes Road up here, it is a 20 or 25-foot width buffer that has landscape plantings that are part of it. Again, there's a program, there's a page that shows where all the buffers are required, and there's a significant amount of buffering required. But that is I think it's actually a 20-foot width buffer with landscape plantings, trees and shrub plantings that would go along the perimeter of the neighborhood there on Holmes Road, as opposed to a 25-foot tall berm. You would actually probably, at a 3-to-1 slope, I think I calculated that's about 150-foot width you need to be able to try to do a 25-foot tall berm. So that's not something that's really going to be feasible. So we're looking at a 20-foot width landscape buffer with landscape plantings to provide that buffer between this neighborhood and that development. So I think that covered everything additional. Any questions for me or for the applicant?
Is there any questions from the board?
So Ben, am I to understand that the city, those are actually city streets?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
It wasn't like up on 300 with the...
Yeah, these will all be city streets. They'll all be designed and constructed to city standards.
Okay.
Yeah.
The infrastructure wasn't covered on homes. Any sewers, infrastructure?
Yeah, there will be no infrastructure that is extended along Holmes Road. It'll all be internal to the development. Those will all be future developments. So anything that you're not seeing, that really the only thing they're coming around here is the 900 acres that's on the golf course. Anything that you see, if they want to bring the screen up again, anything that you see here is kind of in the tan colored or in this gray colored area, those would be coming in the future. So this preliminary plan just covers the 900 acres you see in the color right here. Anything outside of that will come in a future preliminary plan. It'll come back to the Plan Commission. You all receive notification when those come back. So this will come in multiple phases in terms of this preliminary planning. We'll do the same thing for every one of these other sections that you did this process we went through tonight. We'll hold this same process later at a later date once there's further definition of some of these other areas.
Anyone else has it from the board? Okay, Ben, as I understand it, we talking about the PUD ordinance. Is that what we have to come up with?
So, what we'd be looking through here tonight is a decision on the preliminary plan. So we'd be looking for a recommendation for approval, denial, or continuance on the preliminary plan application.
Okay. So it's a preliminary plan approval to develop 1,533 lot residential, right? Is that the one?
2257.
I would motion to approve docket 22-57 and preliminary plan for the Waterford development.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
JohnLassley,
Aye.
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Ally Mullen,
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
No, I'll just reiterate again, there's a lot more to come on this development. So a lot of construction documents that will need to be done, secondary plats, and this will come in over the next number of years. Again, I don't know how many sections will be 1,500 lots, but we're talking about a number of sections that'll come in over time. This really just kind of sets the broad framework, and there'll be a lot more detail as this moves forward.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the docket is docket number 22-58, 98 Investments LLC requesting development plan approval for a 3.7 acre industrial development to be located at 250 North Enterprise Boulevard. The property is zoned planned business industrial. Ben?
All right, let me find my way back here on my computer now that I'm reconnected. All right, this is a development plan application for what I will describe as an infill site in the industrial park. Let me pull up the site. So this kind of gives you a general idea. Oops, and I zoomed in and I got to find my map again. This is the project site in the existing Lebanon Business Park. Just to the north here is State Road 32 and coming south on Enterprise Drive. This is about a 3.5 acre site that has been vacant since the park was developed. And we now have an application with this before us here. It's a development plan application. I'll let the applicant describe a little bit about the building. It is a speculative building. They are essentially small spaces that would be, you know, if you've got somebody that's, I guess the gentleman that's constructing this has had a race team, and so he's looking for things like people that have small race teams where they have a place to bring a car inside, work on the car, like a small landscape business that just has a couple of vehicles they need to be able to put inside. So it's meant to be like flexible industrial space for small users who are looking for like 2,500 square feet or less to be able to have a space. And the other is large businesses that are downsizing, you know, things like that, where they're no longer needing the space they have. So it's an interesting concept that's worked very well in other communities to provide space like that for people that just need a little bit more space than what their garage on their property, or in some cases downsizing from the large space. So it is an interesting project. It will be constructed in 2 phases. Let me zoom back out and get to another page so we can see that. So this is the site plan here. Let me zoom back in a little bit again so we can see it a little bit better. So this is the overall building that you see here. The overall building is about 48,000 square feet. It's developed in 2 phases, so you've got a 24,000 square foot phase that is the east half of the building. Depending on demand, he may build the entire building all at once, but he's intending right now to develop in 2 phases. Each one of these spaces would have an overhead door on them, and then a couple of parking spaces directly adjacent to the space, and then there'll be any overflow of parking is provided along this north perimeter that you see here. And Enterprise Drive here to the east here of the building. So that's the general site plan. You've got about a 48,000 square foot building. You can see the tenant spaces range anywhere from 3,000 square feet to 4,000 square feet. So they're all roughly in that space. If somebody wanted to come in and take in multiple spaces, that could be done, or they could be as small as 3,000 square feet for somebody. So that's the general overview of the building. In terms of the development plan, I'll kind of walk through the different components. Again, the first component is in the setbacks and other bulk standards, and they have met all the applicable bulk standards of the Planned Business Industrial Zoning District. In terms of the parking requirement, again, this is a speculative building, so we don't have specific parking requirements here. Typically, these will be primary warehouse users. You're not going to see, manufacturers or anything moving small space like this. So it's going to be primarily small warehousing spaces. Which again, as I mentioned on a previous application, that's 1 space per employee on the larger shift plus 1 space per vehicle, and they've provided plenty of parking to be able to accommodate what we might see in the typical warehouse space here. They got 53 spaces total on the site. A lighting plan, they have submitted a lighting plan that meets all applicable requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, and essentially they're going to have lighting on this north side of the building to light up this parking area, but they don't have any light spillage on any neighboring sites. In terms of landscaping, they did get a variance from parking lot perimeter landscaping on the north side of the building, which is essentially their warehouse area. I'm going to have to zoom out. Engineers always put the landscaping the last page in here, so I have to go find it.
It's irritating.
Here's a landscape plan. You see here they provide a majority of the landscaping to the east of the building, between the building and the street. and then some additional shrub plantings along this perimeter here just north of the drive. The reason that there's not additional landscaping in this area that's kind of north of the drive here is because they've got a swale that brings all their stormwater from west to east along this north property line, and then the inlet is in this area here, so there's really no more space other than right up against the parking lot perimeter, put additional landscaping because of the way the drainage works on this site. So we certainly didn't want to impact their drainage patterns by trying to put landscaping within it, so we kept it outside of that. And so they have met all the landscaping requirements when you also consider the variances that were approved. In terms of signage, again, this is a speculative building, so we don't have any signage requirements until the users are known. And in terms of signage, they're allowed a multi-tenant ground sign along the frontage, and then they could put signage on each tenant space on the building in terms of wall signage, and those will be identified at a later date once those tenants are identified. In terms of architecture, this is a precast concrete building. Again, it's very difficult to see at these scales here. Just gives you a general idea what the building looks like. Again, this top one is the north side of the building. You can see there's an overhead door that's associated with each one of those spaces, and then also a customer employee entrance. And so it gives you a rough idea. In terms of the other sides of the building, it's fairly straightforward in terms of an industrial space. So your primary access points are all on the north side of the building with the overhead doors and the customer entrance.
Yeah, you have a color.
Oh, yeah, we can bring that up here in a second if you want to fill in the gaps that I've missed. And finally, then, that's kind of a quick overview of the project. A staff recommendation, find compliance with the Unified Development Ordinance requirements for the subject site, and staff recommends approval of the subject development plan contingent on the following conditions. And that would be that the applicant adequately address any remaining City of Lebanon Technical Advisory Committee comments, and they have addressed most of them, but we'll just have to kind of dot all the remaining I's and cross all the T's, make sure all those TAC comments are addressed. And second, the signage plan, that a signage plan would be submitted indicating location and elevations of any proposed signs, and receive sign permits for any sign installation. And I think that's all we've got, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? To Ben?
Ben, the only question I have, really unique building, that's kind of cool just the way it's laid out, but can you give us any idea of the amount or the number of buildings in the business park now that are vacant, if any?
That are vacant? I think that there are maybe some buildings that may have some space available, but I don't know any that are significantly vacant. The only one that I know that doesn't have a tenant right now would be the spec building that Duke just constructed about a year or two ago. It has never had a tenant. It's a brand new building, but my understanding is they're working with somebody to take that under contract now, but that's the only significant space I'm aware of, and it's a brand new building.
I've got a question. It's probably on there. I wasn't able to see it. Do you know how tall the building will be?
Let me zoom in here a little bit and I can tell you. It is 28 feet. It's the same one.
Do you have any other questions? I have a question for you, Ben, about the heating and air. Where will they be located at on those buildings?
Oh, the HVAC equipment?
Yeah.
I'll let them answer. I don't know that I have that on the elevations, but I'll let them address that.
Okay. Okay. No other questions? Has the applicant come forward, please?
Good evening. I'm Dale Cruz, Cruz Consulting. My office is in Avon at 7384 Business Center Drive, and I'm the civil engineer on this project. I'm here this evening on behalf of Chad Baseflug and his wife, Christine Baseflug, who are the entrepreneurs of this project. It's the first building Chad's built. Chad has a pretty heavy background in racing. He's actually a driver, and he is well entrenched with the racing community in Brownsburg, mostly. I have been involved with a handful of buildings very similar to this in Brownsburg and a handful of locations, and they've proven to be very successful in Brownsburg. The latest one we did was
It was two buildings that were basically half the size of this, two buildings that were about 12,000 square feet. And the developer of those two buildings occupied about half of one of those buildings, and his plan was to hopefully lease those buildings out over the course of 3 years, and it took one to lease them all. It's in Brownsburg, but it's a similar, basically an identical concept to what Chad's proposing to do here. Chad and Christine live in Lebanon. They live just about 2 miles west of this site. They're invested, they're believers. I think with the development that we just saw before this and the many that are to come, there are going to be people that are going to want to rent here. They're not all going to be race team related, but Chad kind of hopes they are, but they won't. The reality of it is they won't all be race team related. There might be a safety component, safety supplier, there might be a brake supplier, there might be, their suspension supplier, there might be some of those, but honestly, this thing will be open for rent to whatever's permitted in the PUD ordinance. How do I get this to come on? So that's basically what the building wants to look like. The colors are, the main color is white, then it gets an accent stripe, a gray accent stripe that's just above the doors, and then the doors and the hardware around the doors and the trim colors are black. So that's not this building, but that's the colors, that's basically what this building will look like, is that right there, what you see on the screen. And then your question about the HVAC units, those things will be on the roof, so they shouldn't be visible from the ground. And that's about all I have. I'd be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Any questions for the applicant? Ben, would that, if he puts them on top, or if they're not shaded, are they going to be?
Yeah, essentially what we'll need to do is have their architect put together an exhibit that shows the location and size of those HVAC equipment, and then they essentially have to do the sight lines from the adjacent street just to make sure they're not visible. But so we'll go through that exercise with them just to, as they're going through the further planning on the construction plan.
Just want to be sure he gets them right.
Yep,
Okay.
we'll make sure we get that.
All right. Anyone else have a question? Okay, I'd entertain a motion. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't see any public out there, but I will ask them. I don't see any out there, so we'll close the public hearing. Okay? So now I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the development plan contingent on the following conditions: that all TAC comments are addressed and they present a signage plan.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call for the roll.
John Lastly. Dan Bayshore. Kevin Krulik.
Yes.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Ashley Paddock.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Ally Mullen.
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ben, you have anything else? Any other business? Okay. I would have entertained a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
Before I
motion.
do that, hang on. The next meeting, I'm sorry, Plan Commission scheduled for Monday, October 17th, 2022.
I move we adjourn.
There's a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
So fast, keep